Do pilots' unions really increase pilot pay? Stick around to learn more about the economics of pilot unions.
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast, where we cut through the noise and bring you real, honest conversations about investing, retirement, and building lasting wealth. No sales pitches, no gimmicks, just everything your financial advisor won't tell you.
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. I'm Casey Smith. Today I'm joined with William Medcalf, financial advisor, CFP here at Wiser Wealth Management. Today we're going to talk about, do pilot unions really make you richer? The economics of collective bargaining. Hey, William.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing good. So you might wonder, what does William know about this? I will say William is a very, very good researcher. He gets down into the weeds. And this is a topic that we see pop up online quite a bit. So I thought we would do a podcast and kind of wade in on union or no union.
Yeah.
My background is I was in a union for 10 years of the 12 years I was flying. So I've been non-union and I've been in a union.
Okay.
And so I have my opinions
Yeah.
of whether a pilot union is helpful or not. I will say pilots like to complain about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they complain about the union.
Yeah.
Very, very much so.
Yep.
But let's dive into our topic today. So first of all, does a pilot's union make you, I hate this word, richer,
wealthier? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you're in charge of whether you're wealthy or not, and your employer could decide if you're rich. That has to come to do with what you get paid, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I tell my kids all the time. Rich means you have high
Good
income.
distinction.
Wealth means you actually have resources or assets.
Right. That's true.
You don't spend it all on disposable items, right?
Right.
So let's just talk about what richer, in pilot terms, what should richer mean?
Yeah. So I guess there's a couple things that came to our minds. Higher hourly rates and total compensation. Obviously, that's important.
Right.
There's some things that come in with that. Multi-year raises and sort of things like that locked in, predictable schedules, benefits that compound wealth, and then job security and career management. So I don't know, of those four things, maybe there's certain things that you think are more or less important, but, I think all of these things are very important. And those are the things that we came up with when we're trying to sort of define what that means for pilots.
Right. So richer, things that affect your income, ability to choose to fly more or not, I guess.
Yeah.
Your 401k can make you richer. Profit sharing can make you richer. Per diem, the amount of money you get paid tax-free when you're away from base, that can be meaningful, especially if you can live below that number.
Right.
Depending on what kind of flying you're doing, maybe. And then there's things that make you richer because you can protect your flying. So there's a thing called scope that the mainline pilots set how many regional jets can be flying for a particular airline. So there's like a max, right?
Okay.
So that determines if your pilot group gets most of the flying or if it can be outsourced to the regional.
Okay.
Right. So that kind of ebbs and flows over time. And then obviously clear upgrade rules and then base stability. So if you're not going to get richer if your base opens for 6 months and closes.
Right.
And move you across the country and then that closes and then you open up another one somewhere else. Like that's not going to help you live a better life. So I think if we phrase our conversation today in richer means those things,
right,
then I think we can kind of be on the same page.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So let's start with the thesis.
Yeah. So, unions can increase the price of pilot labor, but wealth depends on career duration and, stability and obviously using your bargaining leverage.
So our thesis is yes, pilot unions increase pilot pay and lifetime earnings, but they don't create wealth out of thin air.
Right.
Right.
Right. Because you as a pilot obviously are very valuable because you have a very specific skill set. And we'll actually get into that when it comes to, discussing airlines that have unions or that are unionized versus non-union.
Yep.
And there's some nuance that comes into play there, but basically, either way, you're going to be paid pretty well compared to the average American just based off of your, the severity of what happens if you go wrong. So you have to be really good at what you do.
Right.
But also just the, training and all of the things that goes into giving you that skill.
So if you're at an airline that has no unionization, and we're strictly talking about pay, your pay should still be relatively high because, as you mentioned, we have extreme skill and certification requirements.
Right.
So there's a bit of barrier to entry. You don't just sit there one day and go, I think I'll go fly that thing over there. I'm going to apply for that job.
Right.
You start in a Cessna or a Cirrus or a Diamond or something like that. And then you go to flight training school, and then you hope you get picked up you have to have 1,500 hours or 1,100 hours in some circumstances. You get picked up by not Delta, American, or United. You get picked up by a regional carrier, flying a regional jet.
Yep.
And then from that point, you're building time in the right seat as a first officer. And then you get promoted and move to the left seat. So now you're in charge of the regional jet, and now you're a captain. But you have to have so many captain hours to then go apply at American, Delta, United, right?
Right.
Majors. Now,
Yeah.
there were some shortcuts. There were schools that were putting people directly into the right seat of like Spirit and Frontier and other airlines, which all have tremendous safety records.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with skill. How we got to the 1,000, 1,100, and 1,500 is a little sad. There was a airline called Colgan Air that put a turboprop into a house in Buffalo on landing. And they basically stalled and went just kind of spiraled, or not spiral, but I think they just kind of pancaked all the way down into this house. And after the congressional investigation, they determined that we have more flight hours, and it had really nothing to do with that, but it was kind of Congress's way of saying we solved the problem.
Doing something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we have to get over this hurdle, which has become a bit of a sticking point in the industry to get people out of that and into the regionals. So anyway, it takes a lot of certifications to get to that point. If you want to switch, so if you want to change your aircraft type rating, so a Boeing 737 pilot cannot just walk out and go fly an Airbus.
Right.
They have to go through training again inside the airline. Airline pays for it, but they have to go through training again in order to do that. So it has a high cost. Or if an airline says we're getting rid of all of our 737s, we're going to get Airbuses, every single one of those pilots has to be trained. So then you have to hire training pilots.
Right.
So the bigger the airline gets, the bigger training the facilities get. Right.
Right.
So that has a barrier to entry. And we have obviously critical safety is a critical role. So you want to hire competent pilots. There's some suggestions that perhaps the DEI hires have not really helped the safety situation. We've had some regional issues. We had a RJ get upside down on a Toronto runway last year.
Yep.
That actually I don't think had to do with time, because it was a bad pairing. You had a simulator instructor who you think is, they're in charge of training, but flying a box is very different than flying an airplane.
Right.
And then, so you had him in the left seat and you had a new first officer in the right seat. That's a bad combination.
Yep.
You should have your sim instructors out flying with seasoned people in the right seat is typically how that should work. So that was an airline pairing issue, in my opinion. We have limited global supply of pilots. So there's been a shortage really since the COVID era, where we retired all of our senior guys because no one was flying. And then all of a sudden everybody starts flying. We have to then go hire, but we can't bring back the retired guys. Now we have to start over. So there were some massive hires happening. It's slowed down tremendously.
Yeah.
But there's still going to be a perceived shortage for a while. And then also you can't scale quickly. So obviously we saw that coming out of COVID, and it's still somewhat that way now. If an airline wants to really scale up quickly, the pilots are an issue. So this being all said, even without a union, pilots are in great demand, and so therefore the pay should reflect that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Especially like you said, post COVID, you create a sort of artificial supply shortage in the market. And then you kind of see the results of that over the last few years, with everybody basically funneling, up, the ladder into the majors and those sorts of things, which it has slowed down, but we've seen that here.
So let's talk about what unions can actually change.
Yeah. So I think a good way, there's a couple things that we have here, but I think one thing to consider is, as far as pay goes, unions basically raise the floor, not the ceiling. And so, they push base pay higher. And because you're bargaining, obviously, at such a large scale, even for, we'll probably get into this later, non-union pilots, that also raises the rate there. So that is a perceived benefit of unions, even for non-union aviators. So
Yeah, for a long time, unions in their negotiation would let like the first year pilots have really low pay, and then second and third, the pay would come up quite quickly. That's something that sort of got fixed in these last contracts because there's such a big demand for pilots. Airlines had to offer an incentive
yeah,
to come there because people would walk out in training. They would start their training and go, "Oh man, I'm at whatever XYZ airline, but they just offered me in for the next year. I'm better off there."
yeah,
So they would leave out of training and go there. I know a guy that was
wow,
at Southwest, then he went to United in training, and then he finally got the Delta offer and he went to Delta in training. He was in
wow.
training for almost a year, never flew anything.
That's crazy. That's
and,
insane.
and for him, Delta was a lifestyle. And they had a higher pay, but he could live in a base and not commute.
Yeah.
United felt more stable to him than Southwest did.
Mm-hmm.
So for different reasons for him, but that was unheard of a long time ago.
Yeah.
In the past, you just grabbed onto one and you held on to it.
Yeah.
That part has definitely changed.
Yeah.
I'll say this. So as far as real world proof, what unions are we talking about? Because there's Airline Pilots Association, which most people would associate the pilots union being. But other airlines like Southwest, they have SWAPA. They don't have ALPA. They have their
Right.
own in-house union. American Airlines has APA, which
Right.
is their own in-house union. And then there's the Teamsters, which I don't know why anybody would sign up for the Teamsters, but it'd be great for truckers probably. Why they run an airline, I don't know. But they have they represent Horizon, and there's another airline. Escapes me. It'll come back to me in a minute. So we have ALPA, Southwest, Teamsters, and then there's
APA.
APA. We have to not say that all unions are equal.
Right.
There's probably a better one of the groups, but I don't. Well, let's talk about real world proof. So if you look at ALPA, in the last contract, there were 34 to 46% cumulative raises. Southwest is the highest still at 50%, but they were lower.
I think they were also later. So
Yes.
they got the raises later. That was my understanding.
The Teamsters got pretty big raises for Horizon, but I would argue that all the regionals were underpaid. Every single regional had significant pay increases and incentives.
Yeah.
I still get postcards in the mail to come back to flying, and they'll pay me $150,000 my first year.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, but where were you in 2002?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
2002, I got paid $18 an hour.
Yeah.
My wife was a school teacher, and it cost me more to go to work than it did what I was making. But I was just building my flight time to get out of there. Right.
Right. That's crazy. It's a lot different now.
So what can they actually change? Again, I think they can push base pays higher. They can lock in scheduled raises. They can reduce the dispersion between airlines. Delta had a claw, or I don't know if it's a clawback, but if United got higher rates than them after Delta negotiated, Delta would match United rates.
Okay.
So those are things that, as an employee in a non-union environment, you can't do that. Southwest Airlines Skywest Airlines, the regional carrier that flies for Delta, American, United. They fly the CRJs. They don't have a union.
Okay.
They're based out of Salt Lake City or Utah somewhere.
Okay.
So yeah, their pay isn't as competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here's an important part. They make flying safer. So you think about unions and the history of unions, and you think about coal mines and people were dying. And they formed a union. They said, we're not going to work on these conditions. These are the minimum conditions we're going to work under.
Yep.
You don't think about that with airline pilots. Airline pilots, you think guys are making big money, doing really cool jobs, flying around the world. But here, let me give you a scenario. So pilot captain comes in, he looks at the weather, and he goes, wow, this does not look like the safest route to me. Like, I'm not really comfortable doing this. So what he does is he calls up the dispatcher, who's also jointly responsible for that flight. He says, "Hey, let's talk about this." And they go, "No, we think you could probably do this." And he's like, "No, I really don't want to do this.
Yeah.
May have to call a chief pilot or something." But in the end, he's not going to get fired because he chose not to do that.
Yeah.
Delta had a 757 that the captain felt a flutter in the elevator. So and that makes their nose go up and down.
Mm-hmm.
This was in the news recently. He felt a flutter. And so he wrote it up in the manual as you would normally do. He tells them, we have a problem with this. He goes home. He finished his flight. He went home. And the next day he comes back to work and they've given him the same airplane again. But the maintenance says, we inspected it, could not duplicate, no issues found, good to go.
Yeah.
He's like, no. There is something wrong.
Yeah.
With that elevator. And so he refused to fly the airplane, which kind of made national news.
Mm.
But in the end, he's not going to get fired for that.
Yeah.
And because he refused to fly it, they ended up having to break it down and do all things. Whether they found anything or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, he refused to do that, but his job is protected.
Right.
That's because of the union being there.
Yeah.
When I was at Colgan Air, back in early 2000s, 2002 to 2003, 4-ish, I remember we would go into some crazy places like Rutland, Vermont. You guys that are listening who are pilots, we had to fly to an NDB, do 1 minute time descents into a valley to shoot this localizer down the valley into the airport. And sometimes we get down there collecting all this ice on the airplane. You can see it. You're trying to shed it. There's it's a turboprops. It doesn't just melt off the wing, right? It has these boots on the front, and you have to pull a switch and it inflates these boots, and the ice comes off. And we get down to the bottom. You wouldn't see a darn thing, and be like, "All right, we have to go missed approach." So you missed approach. You climb back out, and you're collecting ice on the way out. Crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would divert to another airport. I don't remember which one, but I felt like 9 times out of 10 when I went there, I felt like I was diverting for you only went there in the wintertime, and it was nasty as weather whenever we flew there. Well, when we landed, we would get a call from the chief pilot. And the chief pilot would say, talking to the captain, not to me, I was the first officer, talking to the captain, he goes, "Why'd you have to go miss?" He goes, "Well, we got down there, we couldn't see anything." And then the chief pilot would follow up and say, "Do you know how much this cost us for you to go miss? Like, why couldn't you just get that thing in there?"
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And so captains were scared of that phone call. And so they would, I don't feel like I was ever on a flight. They took additional risk.
Right. But you could see why they would.
But you could see the anxiety in their eyes going, "Oh my gosh, I hope we see something. I don't want to get this phone call."
And it might make that decision time a little bit longer. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's a pure example. When I got to Atlantic Southeast Airlines, that was Delta Connection. You go missed, you didn't get a call from anybody. If you did, it was, "Oh man, thanks for trying. Great job."
Yeah.
It was a
big difference.
Totally different culture.
Yeah.
Colgan was non-union. You upgraded by merit. They could skip you because you looked at them funny, right? Where ASA, union, you upgrade in order. Now you still have to pass training and all that. It's not
right,
like
of
they
course.
just say it, but it's more like it's your turn. It's your turn to try to upgrade.
Right.
I guess is the best way to put it. Upgraded captain from the right seat to the left seat. And they had this whole program that everybody in the right seat's a captain in training. So basically they train them the same way as a captain, but your decision-making skills as a young person needs to get honed in by seeing the correct actions. And so that's what they were trying to do. And then over at Colgan, it was just the cowboy show, right? And the guy who never went miss was the guy who was like, "Oh, he's the best pilot here. He never ever goes miss. He hardly costs us any money." So So the safety is my point.
Yes.
So I think the number one reason you should have a pilots union is for the safety of the people behind you, because in the end, you don't want some guy in accounting going, "Hey, we should be doing this because it saves us fuel," or you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that's the number one. And then number two, I think, is obviously the wages, but that's what most people, airlines safety. Our travel is so safe that people don't think about the accidents,
right,
or the culture or the negative culture.
Right.
They think only about the pay necessarily.
Before we continue, do you want to make the most of your airline's 401k plan? We've created free 401k allocation guides for most major airlines to help you do just that. Download yours for free at pilotretirement.com. Now back to the episode.
Oh, yeah, this is a good point. Wealth isn't just wages. So you can go online and you can look at different pilot pay, but it really your pay comes down to credits. So it's what you get paid for the credits you get for the month.
Hmm.
So that's where you could have minimum day pay. You could have overtime and premium pay. You could have stable schedules would help. Transparent upgrade and displacement rules. These are all things that aren't dollars per hour, but there are things that add to the pay.
Right.
So just because an airline gets paid more per hour to fly a certain type of airplane doesn't mean that you actually make more money than someone else is getting paid less per hour.
Right.
It comes down to these different credits and how that builds in. How does that matter? I mean, you're a planner.
Yeah.
How would that matter if you had guaranteed minimum pay and stable schedules?
Yeah, I mean, it gives us the ability to plan for the long term instead of, week to week.
Yeah.
So, or, month to month. So, I mean, when you're doing things that are longer term decisions, retirement, taking out a mortgage, and then obviously we have volatility sometimes in that industry. So just being able to basically smooth that out during the good years is important as well. So you're not having to, worry about that, while times are good.
Yep.
Being a planner, you have to know what the baseline set of circumstances are, and we can deviate from that, obviously, or we can plan around, unforeseen things, but it is good to know sort of what's on the horizon.
So think about when you look at our airline pilot clients versus a regular employee somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think is the biggest wealth generator difference?
Yeah, so that's a good question because we have other clients that also have high incomes that are, W-2 incomes, but the real differentiator is probably the contribution to the 401k is what I would say.
Absolutely.
And the ability to then, pick up trips, I think is another side benefit. But
Yeah.
really, if you had, side by side, same exact W-2 income, it's definitely, the ability for that for Delta or whoever, American, Southwest, these big major airlines to, basically max your 401k. Sometimes we see within Q1,
Yeah.
most even very highly compensated employees usually don't have that.
No, I would, you look at a CEO of a corporation, he's banking that extra money either through company stock or he's just putting money from his paycheck, bonuses, incentive pay into brokerage accounts.
Mm-hmm.
But the airline pilots at the major airlines today are getting 18%
Yep.
of whatever they make put into their 401k plan. So much so that they top out at
Yes.
70,000 or 71,000, I guess, this year, and what they can put into a 401k
Mhm.
plan. And it spills back over into their paychecks, or some airlines, United, American, Southwest, have these market-based cash balance
Right.
plans right now that allow that person to continue to save even more for retirement. There's no doubt that that would not be there if it wasn't for union negotiation.
Yep.
Now, to be fair, they did lose their pension
Right.
in order to get those, but this is better than a pension, in my opinion. 'Cause
Yeah.
that money's yours.
Yeah, it's yours, and you can control outside of the market-based cash balance plan, but you can control how it's invested, so you're not relying on somebody else to take care of
That's
you.
right.
So, yeah.
And then profit sharing, Delta and United have pretty good profit sharing. Delta's probably the best. American just doesn't have the profits. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
But then I guess long-term benefit protections that survive downturns. So they're not. It would take a lot just to start furloughing pilots because things slow down in the economy. The
Yeah.
airline would have to be suffering at the same time in order to really do that.
And max funding the retirement plans is another way to avoid having all of your eggs in that one airline basket. And, that's something we talk about when we're doing planning, just
Yeah.
because you think about the main things that can disrupt a airline pilot's plan are things like, being furloughed, losing your medical, something happening with the company, like even what we've seen at Spirit recently.
Right.
Because you do have a lot of eggs in that one basket. So, going back to the point about the pension, having a retirement account that's separate, that's entirely yours, that isn't banking on the company being entirely successful is, a huge benefit to you.
Yeah. In the latest, let's talk about real world proof, recent pilot contracts.
Sure.
We've interviewed couple of experts on this topic believing that the next downward cycle is underway just because these pilot contracts are so rich. Is it really
Mhm.
going to be really, really hard for airlines to maintain these pay rates?
Yeah.
But any pilot that's been in the industry for 30 years and starting to exit now has been through a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah.
Uh, is you have to be ready for that as a pilot, which is why financial planning is so important. To be ready for the not so good days. But these big pay raises were not like, they weren't magic. They weren't unions going, okay, we've had enough of these pay. We're going to get this pay now.
And it's outrageous and completely
Right.
out of line with
Yeah,
reality.
it was.
Yeah.
I would say 75% of it was a gift to them through pilot shortages. Airlines are making good money, and then obviously just their ability to bargain, I guess, had a lot to do with that. But again, I don't think the union created that money. They just organized the leverage to capitalize on that.
Right. And that's something too that I've researched for this a bit, and it seems to me that these big contracts, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, seems like they're not the main reason why an airline does good or bad financially. It seems
No.
like it's the manager side of things more less than pilot pay.
Yeah, I think it's a good fair statement to say that unions don't make pilots richer
Right.
necessarily, but you think about, okay, some scenarios. So right now we have a whole thing playing out with Spirit, Frontier's under pressure, all the low cost airlines, because
Yeah.
people are traveling now for the most part want to pay a premium,
Yeah.
and they want the economy comfort or they want first class.
Yep.
They don't want to participate in any of the fights in the back because humans are
Yeah.
evidently degrading in how civil they are with each other.
Yeah.
So they're willing to pay a premium to just get on, get off, and be near the front, right?
Right.
Well, in Spirit's case, they didn't have that business model. It was a low cost business model that Delta, American United figured out how to beat during COVID. All they had to do is just take a portion of their airplane and give those kind of fares.
Right.
And people would say, well, I'll ride Delta. And you can buy a basic ticket. You don't get Sky Miles for. It looks
Mhm.
very similar to those Spirit airfares, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so they kind of started beating them at their own game. Well, that's not the responsibility of the union. The unions didn't put Spirit into distress, right?
Right. No. It's
Therefore, they don't have
business model.
any leverage either. They can't make
Right.
things better and say, nope, this is what a pilot gets paid.
Yeah.
You're better off if you're searching for an airline or to decide where you want to go. You need to find one that is very strong financially,
Yeah.
because you're better off long term at that airline. Of course, everybody wins
Right.
in that case.
It seems too like, at least in Spirit's case, obviously they've had the 2 bankruptcies now, but it seems to me like the union at least protected pilots on the downside of that, because I think they negotiated with basically like with the retirement plan, they did have their contribution slashed, I think in half,
Yeah,
but they're negotiated, I think for 2028 or 2029, it's like it will return based on how things look now. It'll
Right.
return to the previous level. So, there's maybe a silver lining there too for the union helping you on the downside as well.
where in any other scenario, I think they would just been cut completely to zero.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, pilots are leaving left and right
Mm-hmm.
because
Oh, yeah.
they don't think Spirit's going to make it.
Right.
So again, supply demand's kind of fixing itself, right?
Yeah.
Unions can't force profits to exist. So
Yeah, that's kinda what we're talking
If you had
about.
a Frontier situation, say we want profit sharing just like Delta, you can scream all you want to and try to bargain for that. But if your company has no profits,
Yeah.
there's no profit sharing.
Right. Exactly.
So that's up to management to derive profits. Unions can't really
Yeah.
handle that. They can have what they call no confidence votes. Say we don't have any confidence in this management. This management doesn't know what they're doing. But
Mhm.
it's just more of smoke and mirrors. I mean,
Yeah.
they can't run out a CEO.
Yeah.
Right? And honestly, pilot pay as a percentage of airline revenue is pretty small.
Yeah. Yeah,
As
that's
much
what I
as you-
saw
as much-
too.
As much as you pay these pilots, in the end,
I think
a
it's
pretty
less
small
than
cost.
10%
Yeah.
across most airlines. Yeah. So that's,
The lease of the airplane costs more than what you're paying the pilots.
Exactly.
So anyway, unions can slow pay cuts. They can improve the transparency, and of course, they can trade pay for job security, which is what Spirit pilots are trying to do
Right.
right now. But I would say that they're more shock absorbers, not really shields when it comes to a bad
The downside.
financial situation.
Right.
So yeah, there are some cost to being having a union. So dues, that's real money. They could take 2.5% of your pay and say, okay, 2.5% of your pay is going to go to union dues.
Yeah.
I would say that they're representing the group. They're not representing you individually.
Right.
Unless you're in trouble. If you're in trouble, you can take a union representative to the chief pilot's office. But when they go to negotiate, they're not negotiating for the young guys. They're not negotiating for the old guys. They're just trying to kind of find the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
So you could be somewhat disenfranchised in the negotiation process.
Yeah.
You could be that your pilot groups is mostly young and you're an older pilot, and they do things to favor the young people and not the older people because the majority would rule.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in our notes here, we have the occasional misalignment with junior pilots,
Yeah.
which is very, very true. Also too, you have conflicts of interest. So how is it that ALPA can represent a regional airline at the same time it can represent the major?
Right.
So what's good for Endeavor may not be good for Delta Mainline.
Right.
What's good for Delta Mainline may not be good for Endeavor. So
Yeah.
how do you walk that line?
Yeah.
Especially with scope and work rules and flow through agreements and all those things.
Yeah.
When they're represented by two different factions of the Airline Pilots Association, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's even been lawsuits about that over the years. I don't think anything really became of it, but you are trading individual flexibility for the collective security of the group. So questions investors and economists ask. So do unions hurt airlines and eventually pilots? So what is our answer to that, William?
Well, it's kind of going back to what we talked about. It seems like, at least from what I've, researched, that basically it's not the unions that really hurt the airlines. It's the managerial side of things. Or, pilot pay isn't a significant drag on airlines as a percentage of revenue or where the money is actually being allocated. So there's the labor costs and then the management decisions, and those, kind of, maybe they're conflated, but basically pilot labor is just such a small share of, what it costs to run an airline that it's not really, the big driver of whether an airline is successful. That's what I've seen. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I think most airlines, their failures come from fuel prices, debt. American was kind of on the brink there for a while, and bad strategy. So you look at Spirit, they probably didn't pivot when the market was changing.
Right.
They're putting in first class seats now. They call it the big seat. And, I don't know if anybody's buying the big seat, but it's probably too late because that's not what people think about. People think about a yellow airplane, low cost, and sometimes trashy passengers.
Yeah. Yeah.
but and I say that with all respect, but that's the market that they went after.
Right.
And they were very successful at it for quite a while, but it just that whole business model changed in 2020. But none of it is because of pilot salaries. No one has gone out of business and said we had to pay our pilots too much, so we had to go out of business.
Right. If anything, you want pilots to be well compensated because of what you were talking about earlier. Like if you're losing talent to other airlines, then that's going to be a problem in the long term for whatever airline that you're talking about.
True. So do pilot unions make you richer? Coming back to our final question, I would say yes, if the airline's profitable, strategically aligned with a good business model, the labor market is tight as it is now, and you value stability and long-term wealth.
Right. So you're not chasing every, last, green slip maybe, or maybe it's, or what I guess I should say is you're not negotiating for yourself as much.
Yeah.
You're fine with being negotiated as a group and then, finding ways to maximize your benefits there.
Yeah. Retirement. It's all about retirement calculations.
Yeah.
Do you want to stay at a regional like Endeavor, or do you want to go to mainline? The retirement is two vastly different lifestyles.
Yeah.
Very, very different.
Yep.
So I don't think, so anyway, that's where unions do make you richer. I don't think they make you richer if the airline is structurally weak. If you prioritize individual negotiation, So
Mhm.
you want them representing you specifically.
Right.
That's you're going to never be happy as,
Right.
as a union
Yeah.
person unless you're in the majority of demographic, I guess, at
Right.
that union. You're early in your career and very mobile. So if you're just getting started and you're at a regional area, carrier, I don't know the union really helps you that much. You're
Mm.
just there to build the time and get your time and get
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So if anything, it would be there for safety, for if something bad happens, or some representation, some job protection
Mhm.
from situations, I would
Yeah.
say, right?
Okay.
But when you move in to the major, then it becomes more important to your career and how they represent you.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think pilots don't guarantee riches, but they do dramatically reduce the odds of financial regret.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
getting those larger, of course, because you miss out on the pension, but negotiating for those larger retirement contributions, and then things like the market-based cash balance plan that's trying to protect you from the tax
Taxes.
implications of that.
Mhm.
Those things do add up.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say if you look at the majors, they all, for the most part, look the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think Delta's still a leader. United's really, really close second. American has a little bit ways to go, but you still have a very good career there.
Yeah.
And then after that, they all just kind of fall off a little bit in terms of wealth and um, in some cases, lifestyle is important. So a pilot might choose to be in Alaska because of the crew of the base
Yeah.
and be home. They might choose to be someone. Now, why would you stay at an Allegiant Air or Spirit and Frontier? I think were up and coming airlines. JetBlue was up and coming airline, and they kind of fizzled out where they are.
Yeah.
But they do have good. Do have good compensation, but not as good as the mainline carriers. And I think
Right.
that's a testament to those unions and kind of banding together to say, what are you guys doing? This is what we're going to try to get. Okay, if you get that, then we're going to get that too in our
Right.
negotiation.
Yeah.
Try to band together for the collective group. But again, you might wonder, what does this have to do with personal financial planning? I think that the lines cross when you're trying to decide where you should be for your career, and if you're already there, understanding like how this helps you.
Right. And then how to optimize what you have, whatever the case is. We can help guide you through that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're sitting and learning more about Wiser Wealth Management or want to schedule a consultation to meet with one of our fiduciary financial advisors, like William, you can do so by going to wiserinvestor.com. You can also click the link in the episode notes. See you guys again next week.